This is the Saturday Morning Special from Slasher Sports.
You know, as soon as the intro music played, I thought to myself, we got to get a brand new intro music song that involves our good old friends over at Black Market Dub. We got to really get one in there. I think that might be the last week we use that intro music. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Special. I'm your host, Christian Rouse. Steve, sorry I didn't give you a chance to give a rebuttal off that because I know those are your boys over at Black Market Dub.
Yeah, and they do such interesting stuff. And that you hear the word dub and you're thinking, dreadlocks and reggae, and yes, it is very heavily, technologically driven, but they take like famous albums and famous soundtracks and they just give a whole new treatment to it. So even if you're hearing it as background, like on my show, I use something from a project that, that they did called Tanks Arcade. It's just so much fun. So the only thing we can't change is we can't change that guy that, the football player that just goes like that. Like, okay, come on, bring it on. Give it the best because it really does sum up what this program is on Saturdays. It's like, okay, bring it on. Okay, you guys know so much. Come on.
Yeah. I see you're rocking a Coastal Carolina shirt there today. That's a nice
I am.
one.
You need to represent the underrepresented. I need to rally to the defense of the teams that are getting screwed by the coaches poll and by the college football playoff poll. Okay, are they is Coastal Carolina a team that's going to be in the 4? No, it's not. But still, they've been overlooked all year. So this, I don't have my UTSA hat yet. So Coastal Carolina has to represent all those teams that we love that are not getting any love from the writers and from the media.
Yeah, they had a great game last week against Appalachian State. What a good midweek quarterback battle we had with Grayson McCall and Chase Bryce. If I knew you're wearing the Coastal Carolina shirt, though, I would have wore some kind of Old Dominion thing just to balance it off because their only loss this year is to those Monarchs. Got to get it where I can with Old Dominion this year. Got to do it when I can. We don't know if they're going to be bowl eligible. They got a lot of work to do. They are 1 week away from being in one of our segments where we put a fork in them. So hopefully they can find a win against Marshall this week and move on. We got a great show for you this week for our Power Hour for College Football Saturday. We're going to dig into a Saturday six-pack, and the slate is absolutely loaded. There are some plenty great games to talk about. Obviously, the headline one is Tennessee versus Georgia. We're going to get to that one first. But before we dig into that Saturday six-pack, Steve, we just saw a pretty interesting tweet from Pete Thamel, who's one of the sources we see on College Game Day, we see across all college football, and was talking about Jimbo Fisher and his Texas A&M team is struggling with more than just his offense this week. They're struggling with look like a lot of flu-like symptoms that might cause multiple players to be out against Florida this week, and that is not something you're looking forward to for the Texas A&M team, who is struggling to put themselves and keep themselves alive for bowl eligibility as well.
And then I'm glad I saw it before the game because I do have some help and some props. Texas A&M fans, okay, and players, be a little nauseous. Got you covered here. Some headache pills. Got to watch your temperature.
There it is.
But I think the one thing that would make both the players and the fan base feel better immediately is to fire Jimbo Fisher now. I think the minute you fire Jimbo Fisher, suddenly, hey, wow, I feel a little better. Yeah, I can go today. Yeah, I can go today, coach. I'm fine. The thing that's making me sick all year is gone. So, yeah, you know what? I feel a lot better. I can't believe it. I felt so bad 10 minutes ago, but now that Coach Fisher's fired, wow, I feel so much better.
It's an $85 million flu shot. That's what that sounds like to me. If you get rid of Jimbo Fisher. I almost feel bad that he has turned into a joke in college football. I mean, that's really what it turned into with him, especially this season. he has a lot of great success in the past. We obviously saw what he did with Florida State, but moving to Texas A&M, it just seems like he's just been there for a paycheck. And that's exactly what he's going to get eventually. I just can't see that team rebounding with him still at the helm. I just can't see it. I think Texas A&M is going to have to bite the bullet eventually. It just depends on, the question is when. When are they willing to spend the money to get rid of them? Do they, like, when is, they're going to have to do some really just an analysis to see what is worth keeping him and when, and it's just going to be a tough time for them. I really feel for Texas A&M because they put themselves in a tough pickle. They really did. And it's not going to get over. Those flu-like symptoms are not going away anytime soon for this program.
Okay.
All right, let's dig into this Saturday six-pack, because I believe that this might be one of the most impressive slates we have all year. I feel like I say that every week. This is the best slate until next week. Well, I might have a solid argument for a few weeks here, because the first one we're going to talk about is Tennessee versus Georgia, and you could make the argument, and you could be right about it, that this is the number one team in the country versus the number one team in the country. Tennessee was given number one in the rankings by the college football playoffs. Georgia was given number one by the AP poll. So I know the SEC network is definitely running with that marketing all week, and wouldn't be a shock to say it over here as well. If you want to go based off just college football playoffs rankings, it's 1 versus 3. Georgia is a 9-point favorite against Tennessee Volunteers at home in Athens, over under 65.5. First thing that comes to my mind when I see that spread, Steve, is Tennessee was a 9-point favorite. I'm sorry, 9-point underdog against Alabama as well. Many people didn't think they can get that done. They did. And then when I look at the stats, the team stats, I've watched Tennessee all year, but if you want to play by the numbers like we always do here on Slasher U, biggest thing that pops up to me right away is the passing yards allowed by Tennessee. Can the secondary stop Stetson Bennett and company in the passing game? If they can, I think Tennessee can win this game pretty handily. What's your thoughts?
Every time I think about that point spread, I literally have to stop for a moment, and because it's almost disbelief, but it shows you, especially in college athletics and mostly in college football, how big home field advantage is for college football, whether it's just a small campus stadium or you have, the larger venues. Georgia at home just flat out doesn't lose. I mean, of course there's games here and there but really they just don't lose. So until Tennessee can prove that they can go on the road and beat their toughest competition, I think that line is always going to reflect that. Yes, they shut up a lot of doubters when they beat Alabama, being a touchdown or more underdog. That could play into it, but I do believe that this is going to be a matter of, can Hendon Hooker will his team? We know what his talent is. Can he will his team and exploit some of the injuries, especially to the Georgia linebacker Nolan, and I'm drawing a blank on his last name. Nolan Smith. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge absence for Georgia. Georgia's deep. Georgia's talented on defense. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, in a lot of ways, is why the coaches have given more love to Georgia than the more statistically based college football playoff committee. But he has the talent to exploit that absence. And if he does that, I think Tennessee erases all of the doubts. All of the conversation with that goes now stops, because Tennessee's offense is just that good, and they've been opportunistic all year long.
Tennessee has a very up-tempo offense. That's something that I think is one of those matchups to look at. And Georgia has a very stingy defense, right? Mm-hmm. Georgia's got one of those top defenses. I think the defensive line of Georgia is going to be very underestimated in this one. I think they have the opportunity to cause absolute havoc to Hendon Hooker and the rest of the Tennessee offense. If the Tennessee offensive line can hold that defensive line in check, I think Tennessee has a very good chance at being able to disguise their offensive plays like they have in the past and really get down the field and get their players open and have a good time. There is an absolute, I would say almost certainty that this could solidify Hendon Hooker as a true finalist and one of the top finalists in the Heisman race by the time we are done with this football game. There is a true certainty. There's also a pretty big certainty that there is a spot that he can no longer be a finalist after this football game. I think Hendon Hooker, I think there's a lot at stake for not only the entire Tennessee football team, but Hendon Hooker as well in his Heisman chances. The winner of this game will have obviously the number one spot in the college football polls. There's no doubt about that, and a commanding lead, and really a front runner, a front seat, if you will, for the SEC East moving into the SEC championship game, and basically command your own destiny moving into the college football playoffs. This is a really interesting game. I know we're spending a lot of time on it because this is probably the game of the year until next week, right? Georgia ranks second in the nation in scoring defense. Hendon Hooker, can he make sure that there's no turnovers for him? I know he's had a great season so far, but it makes you wonder, is there something bound to happen? Stetson Bennett, we saw him have some mistakes against Florida last week. We know that he's had some issues in the past against Florida. Is that just his kryptonite, or is that causing a trend for Georgia and for Stetson Bennett? I don't think that's the case, but you have to ask the question, right? What we saw from him last week causes some concern. I think he has probably the best receiver or tight end, however you want to call it, in Bowers in the nation. I think he's probably one of the most athletic and one of the best players in college football, if not the best. But there's a lot of questions in this one. I think, number one, my question is, can Hendon Hooker get it done? Number two, will Tennessee's secondary keep them in the game? I think the questions rely on, can Tennessee get it done? I think it's their game to lose, even though they're heading into Athens. I think we know what we're going to get with Georgia. We're not really sure what we're going to get with Tennessee. We saw some pretty good flashes with it against them when they played the Crimson Tide, when they played Nick Saban. They really got lucky getting out of there with that knuckleball field goal. Let's be honest. It was a shootout. It was anyone's game. Wouldn't be shocked by any means if Tennessee put up 50 points in this one. That's why I'm definitely playing the over in this football game. I think the over is a pretty safe bet. And I am not afraid to play Tennessee at this +9 by any means, because even if Tennessee winds up losing this football game, I don't see them losing it by a big margin whatsoever. I think Tennessee wins this football game. And I'll go on record saying it. I went on record thinking they could beat Alabama, and I also think they can beat Georgia. I think this is a special football team, and I think we're going to see it today.
I'm with you 100%. And it's ironic because basically it's going to come down to which team better exploits the Achilles heel of the defense. With Nolan Smith not there, Tennessee's passing game, I think, might change, especially early in the game. You're going to see more things out of the backfield, more short over the middle kind of routes. You expect it to go downfield. I think they really want to see, okay, do they have the talent to offset Smith's absence, or can we use this to our advantage and maybe control the clock a little bit more? And the Tennessee secondary, okay, it's given up some big plays, and I think Georgia has the horses to turn that into an advantage for themselves. I'm definitely going the over. I'm definitely going Tennessee. I have been more cynical of Georgia than you have been throughout the year, and then certainly more than the coaches have been. I think, again, Georgia's a great football team. You put Georgia in the ACC, and I don't think they ever lose ever again. In the SEC, I think that you need to rise to the moment, and this is just Tennessee's moment.
Well, we could have an answer with the SEC East and who will most likely be the candidate for that championship game. We can also have an answer in the SEC West, and that's where we're going to head to next. Alabama versus LSU. I feel like this game is getting completely overshadowed by the Tennessee-Georgia game, which honestly, it's hard to blame, because of such, marquee matchup with what we're going to be seeing in Athens this week. But this one isn't something that you should just go and not pay attention to. I'm glad that these two games are at different times because this is the late game. This is the game that I'll be watching. I know the Clemson Notre game is going to be good as well. We'll talk about that one later. That's in our Saturday 6-pack. But this Alabama LSU game, LSU is, we've talked about it time in and time out. They are 1 point away, a blocked field goal away from being a one-loss team. And Alabama, we know their loss against Tennessee was, you could call it lucky if you will. Tennessee wound up winning after plenty of missed field goals by Alabama. Tennessee wins on a knuckleball field goal. However you want to call it, whatever you want to say, a win's a win, a loss is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
This is a prime spot for Alabama. They have to win if they want to keep their college football chances alive. I think LSU doesn't have a chance at the college football playoffs because they're already at 2 losses, but they have a chance to get themselves a win in the SEC, get themselves to the SEC West Championship in the first year in Brian Kelly, a year that we thought was already going to be a building year for this team. We thought they'll be great in year 2. We've said that.
Yes.
We've said that almost every week on this show, but there's a chance that it might not be year 2 for them. Now, maybe for them hitting the college football playoff, sure. But if you can tell me that you can beat Alabama in Brian Kelly's first year and then give yourself a chance to hit the SEC championship game, and it's not Alabama, it's Brian Kelly's LSU, you're doing something great. And that is a hell of a first year, whether you make the 4 playoff spots or not, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go on record now. LSU wins the SEC West next year. That's how high I am on the program that Brian Kelly is building there. There were already building blocks there, but they really needed some new energy. They needed something to get the players excited again. It just seemed like the LSU players last year, they just weren't having fun. And I have to root against Alabama in this game. Not because I have a grudge against the program or the players or the fan base, because I don't. I really admire how deep the passion runs with the Crimson Tide fan base and the tradition of the program. How many years has it been? And I've been around a lot of years where Alabama was not even talked about. I think there was maybe a 5-year stretch where Alabama was irrelevant.
Wasn't long.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but right. So they've always been in that conversation, and it's not because I don't like Nick Saban. I admire Nick Saban. I actually like Nick Saban's personality and his approach to things, and I find it ironic when I type his name into my tablet, Saban autocorrect defaults to savant because he's a coaching savant.
I thought you're going to completely take a different route there and say Saban to Satan, but continue.
But again, now if I was a Nick Saban hater, I would go that route. I would go for the punchline as opposed to what actually happened when I was typing it in. But we have to put a stake through the heart of all of this talk that there's going to be 3 teams from the SEC in the college football playoff. Not only is it bad for college football as a whole, stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
I can't see it happening. Not anymore. I can't.
Yeah, right. Especially, TCU on the ascendance. Clemson has really, after we're kind of an inconsistent start, Clemson has started to build its resume, so it should be in the conversations. I think Ohio State and Michigan are making cases for themselves that if one of them loses in the big rivalry game, they could still be in consideration. But we have to kill, at least for 2022, we have to kill the Alabama talk. If they lose, there's no more whispers about 3 teams from the SEC, and I think it does open doors and possibilities because LSU, I don't believe they're a top 10 football program right now.
Mm-hmm.
The top 15, top 20, sure. But so if LSU wins, they probably have the inside track, for the West title. It'll make for an
For
interesting, SEC championship game. But I think it also now opens up the window. We're going to have one team from the SEC and then see who fights it out for those other slots.
That's fair. Yeah, I can see a possibility of 2. I can't see 3 anymore. I just can't see it. But I do think that we are on a trajectory of only one SEC team being in the college football playoffs. I think that's the way it should be if there's only 4 teams. I truly do. I think if you win your conference or you're the best team in the conference, then that's the way you make it in. When you speak of LSU, right now they are number 10 in the college football playoff polls. If they win today, I mean, there is definitely a lot of talk that you could be possibly a top 5 team. I think that 2 losses might keep you out of the top 5 just based on everyone else we see, but I could see them moving up to 6 or 7 easily without a doubt. I feel like there's 2 things right off the bat that I am going to be paying attention to this football game. What does Jaden Daniels do? Right off the bat, that is, I think he is going to be the X factor in this football team or football game, whether it's good or bad. Can he handle the pressure that Alabama's going to bring? Because Alabama's defense is nothing to shake off. This is a very important defense you need to pay attention to. And then obviously Bryce Young, we've seen even when he's had a bum shoulder, he plays absolutely electric. We saw what he did against Tennessee a few weeks ago. He can play football. There's a reason he won the Heisman last year. We're going to be talking about Bryce Young very early during the NFL draft come April. He is going to be one of those top picks. I think obviously that is something that you have to keep in mind, but I don't think he is the X factor on Alabama this week. I think it's Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be one of those players that if he gets it going, LSU, I mean, say goodbye to the spread. Right now, Alabama is a 13.5 point favorite. I mean, that is a lot of points for LSU right now. I think LSU can really keep it within 2 scores. But if Jahmyr Gibbs gets it going, especially what we've seen with LSU's run defense, who is allowing almost 150 yards per game, that's one of the worst in the SEC right now. If Gibbs, who is arguably one of the best running backs in the country, I would say behind maybe just a few in the Big Ten right now, he's probably the best running back in the SEC. I would probably argue that and wouldn't have to debate anybody but Adore. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the best running back in all of the SEC. If he can get it going against LSU, who has struggled against the run, I think Alabama could win this game pretty easily. I think that is the kryptonite for LSU. But if they find a way to stop him and keep Bryce, if you will, one-dimensional. I mean, that's to what the definition of what Bryce Young one-dimensional might be. Who knows? Because we haven't seen that ever, even when he was hurt against Arkansas. I think they have a better chance of winning this football game, or at least keeping it within the spread. I got to lean towards Alabama in this one. We saw what they have done against Tennessee. That was a win that could have, should have happened, whatever you want to call it. LSU, I'm still going to hold on to that narrative that they are 1 year away from being that team that we think that they can be and should be. I think that they're ahead of schedule. I did not expect them to be as good as they are right now. I think they are ahead of schedule. I think what they are doing and what Brian Kelly's got going on is fantastic. But I just can't rule out Alabama yet. I think they keep their hopes alive. They find the way into the SEC championship and keep their college football hopes alive. I think that happens this week, and I think they get it done. However, I'm not playing Alabama minus 13.5. I don't think I'm actually touching this game, but if I had to, I would take LSU in the points because I think this game's a lot closer than it is. At least it's not 2 scores, maybe 1 score.
I'm absolutely not touching this game because there's so many factors. And it's funny, we talked about the home field advantage for the Bulldogs and how that, I think, influenced the point line. I'm surprised that LSU is almost a 2-touchdown underdog at home.
Right.
That environment is as exciting and as electric and as crazy, and I'm emphasizing more on the crazy than the other things, than any place in college football. It'll be interesting to see whether that disrupts some of the things at the line of scrimmage for Alabama. Does that cause delay games or movement penalties? Those are all little things that go to factor into the win. Because I stated my case that I have to root for LSU, I'm going to pick LSU, and I might even put on like the EWTN network, which was based in Alabama, and maybe say some rosaries and some prayers for LSU to beat Alabama so that we can stop this 3-team SEC narrative. We need to. It's an exorcism. We need to exercise.
It absolutely goes away if Alabama loses, and I would say that it absolutely goes away if Georgia loses. I think that it turns into a one-team narrative if we get Tennessee win and LSU win. I think that it turns into a one-team narrative of who makes the college football playoffs out of the Southeastern Conference. Let's move on over and let's talk about some independent teams, if you will. And I think this is a fun conversation. We talk about the rankings in the college football playoffs. Well, this team didn't make the college football rankings. They were the only team that was ranked in the AP, but wasn't ranked in the college football playoff rankings, and that's Liberty. Hugh Freeze has been mentioned all across social medias, the news, the newspaper, wherever you get it. I'm pretty sure there was probably a telegram out about Hugh Freeze this week. Will he go to Auburn even after the extension with Liberty? There's a possibility, right? I think his name is going to be going all across from February, March until there is some hirings across these openings in college football. They take on Arkansas is one of those teams what we thought was going to be pretty decent. They've been pretty underwhelming this year, and it's all thanks to their defense. Their defense has been absolutely dreadful. There were some signs of hope in that Alabama game when Bryce Young went down for about one quarter. It was like, I would even say a full quarter. It was just like there was a period of time in the third quarter that Arkansas figured it out. And we haven't really seen that fully since. We haven't seen them play a full good game. And right now they're battling to make it into a bowl game. They're one win away. I think they will find it. I'm not sure if they find it this week, though. Liberty is one of those teams I feel is very underrated. They are a 1-point loss against a Wake Forest team when Wake Forest was on their tip top, on their peak, from being an undefeated football team. Their only loss is a 38-37 loss to Wake Forest. Now, some of their games are not incredibly challenging compared to maybe some of those other ones, if you will. But this is still a team that's 7-1 and deserved to be looked at. The last one against BYU, 41-14. Now, BYU is not the greatest team this year, but they're still a team that needs to be, that still pay attention to. And they beat them fair and square. BYU is one of those teams that are just like Arkansas that have had a flat and thin defense this year. That's why when I look at this spread and I see Arkansas as a 14.5-point favor over the 2-score line, I am immediately putting Liberty not only just on a straight bet, but they're going to be thrown into my parlay this week. I am really excited about this football game. I think Liberty can get the job done against Arkansas, let alone with their spread of 14.5 points, Steve.
Before I dive so deep into Liberty, which I'm going to do, because I'm with you, I think they're the best story in college football.
Yeah,
but I need to put I need to put my virtual dunce cap on.
Okay,
because I'm the guy every Saturday for the first 3 or 4 weeks that kept talking about the Arkansas defense and how physical they are and how they can force turnovers. And, they're going to be, a wild card factor in Arkansas factoring into any divisional title race. And on paper, that's true, but they certainly haven't proven it.
Right. I don't think you were the only one that thought that, though. I will say that. And I think that the hat is deserved. Okay, rock it, put the chin strap on and everything. But I believe that you were probably not the only one that thought that. I think there was a lot of hope. I mean, they were preseason ranked pretty high the beginning of the season. And I think a lot of that had to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I think, Jefferson is a fantastic quarterback, and we're probably going to see him drafted on day one. But that's not the only reason they were looked at as one of a premier team, if you will, in the SEC. Their defense has been completely disappointing. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and then the best line that I saw written, probably about any game all year, but certainly about this game, I saw in the College Football News preview, and it talked about Liberty is as big as its bowl, doing the old goldfish comparison.
Yeah.
Where a goldfish or a betta fish will grow larger in a larger tank.
Sure.
Now, that may or may not be true, but Liberty's disrespect from the college football playoff, the analytics end of it, if you will, is because they struggled a bit against Gardner-Webb. Quite honestly, Akron had opportunities to beat them. I mean, But again, it's what at the end of the game, what's the final score? Liberty beat them. But I mean, so those little things kind of factor in a little bit. But don't underestimate how big that BYU win was for a program like Liberty.
Right.
Okay. Both schools with strong faith-based missions as institutions, and players that choose to go to BYU or choose to go to Liberty do so more for that mission and for the academic approaches taken by those schools. So this was, in essence, if you want, the faith Super Bowl last week, BYU Liberty. I know that sounds funny, but I mean, it's like really like top-ranked athletes that go to Stanford or Northwestern or choose to go to the Ivy League, as opposed to maybe going to a higher ranked program because they're going because of the academics or a specific program. It's the same thing with BYU and Liberty. Yeah. And Hugh Freeze, to his credit, understood what he needed to do. I'll use the service academies as another example. Those coaches, Monken, the coaches at all three service academies, understand they're going to have a limited talent base to build upon, but they develop systems and they try to get the absolute maximum out of those players. Liberty is on the verge of not only having all this talent maximized within a specialized recruiting base, they are now putting themselves out onto the national scene, where if someone has a very strong faith, a high school recruit or a JUCO transfer, and it's a very strong faith, and they're a little uncomfortable going to a traditional football powerhouse, Liberty is a legitimate option now. So I think this game has a lot more writing on it for the future of Liberty football than even what's going on this year. I do think that point spread, while it's a little bit high, I mean, I'm certainly taking Liberty in the points. I do think it is reflective of what the ultimate outcome of this game is going to be. I think the clock is going to strike 12 for Liberty down there in Fayetteville, primarily because, as you said, I think Jefferson is going to find ways to make the big plays that he has to. And I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively as well. So I think I'm going to go with Liberty. I'm going to go with the under in this game, believe it or not, as bad as the Arkansas defense has been. I think I'm going to go with the under on this. But I wanted to give that backstory for Liberty because it's not just, that's a cute story. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot at stake for Liberty in this game. Just like we're talking about LSU making a statement, if they beat Alabama, there's a lot at stake for Liberty. And I think Freeze is going to stay there. I think Freeze is going to become the Mark Few of college football. I think he's found his niche there. And I think he knows that, the ceiling is super high. So when you're watching games like this, don't just dwell on the stats. There's always a reason why a game is super important for one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And I think this, if Liberty beats Arkansas, if they upset them, I think now suddenly you're going to have more conversation about where did this team come from and what are they about, and maybe more of the fan base and more of the media is going to kind of dive into that story better.
If you are a fan from Auburn that wants Hugh Freeze, you might have the opportunity to thank Arkansas multiple times if this is a win for Liberty. Brian Harson's last game, a loss versus Arkansas. Hugh Freeze gets a win against Arkansas. I think our Auburn might be knocking on the door of the current Liberty head coach. There's a strong possibility there. Just keep that in mind. There could be a narrative that we come back to this season if we see a win from Liberty when it comes to potentially a future coach for the Auburn Tigers. Let's head to the Big 12 and let's talk about a team that completely shocked the world last week when they blew out Oklahoma State. And that's Kansas State. What they did last week with no Adrian Martinez was absolutely incredible. I mean, we didn't get it right. We thought the Pokes had a good chance of winning the football game because we didn't know the status of Adrian Martinez. I guess it didn't even matter because what we saw last week was absolutely incredible. There are still some game time decisions with Adrian Martinez. We don't know if he's going to get the start yet. That has not came out, at least at this time. They don't play until 7 o'clock Eastern, so I think we probably won't find out until a couple hours before game time. Probably see how he goes in warmups. But to be honest, after seeing the backup last week, I'm not too worried about if Adrian Martinez can go or not. Now, obviously, it's a completely different football team, different offense when Martinez and his dual threatness is involved. But they take on Texas this week, who is a 3-loss team, the only 3-loss team that was ranked in the college football playoffs. Again, a team that, although I think Texas is on the rise and Steve Sarkisian's doing a good job, I don't think they deserve that spot. I think it should have belonged to Liberty, like we just discussed just a minute ago. However, we've seen Texas play very decent this year with and without Quinn Ewers, and we've also seen some issues as well. For example, we just saw Kansas State beat the brakes off Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago. Texas went on a bye last week, lost to Oklahoma State 41-34. It was a fantastic football game, but when you want to put apples to oranges or apples to apples, however you want to call it, that's a correlation that we can put together. Kansas State beat the brakes off of the Pokes, and the Pokes beat Texas. Texas is still a 3-point favorite going into Kansas State this week. And I find that hard to believe. I really like Quinn Ewers. Don't get me wrong. I think Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. I think that we have seen some issues with him in the last few weeks. He isn't invincible like we thought we saw in the first quarter of the Alabama game, which is fine, right? We want to see those issues get out of the way now because he's going to grow and develop. And I think eventually he's going to be one of the greatest marquee quarterbacks in all of college football, maybe next year or the year after that. Okay, sure. However, when I'm looking at this spread, it's hard for me not to give Kansas State a 3-point favorite after seeing what they did to Oklahoma State last week. They're going in my parlay. I'm taking Kansas State +3, over unders 54.5. Not really touching that one. However, if I had to, I would lean towards the over. Even though both the defenses are pretty good, both these offenses can score, and that's where I'm sitting at. Although both of them have done pretty well against the passing game. That's why I'm not touching the over-under. But if I had to play it, I would say over, Steve.
I'll go with you on that. And I think of all of the games we're talking about today, and maybe all of the games on the slate, it comes down to really one player's performance, whether his team wins or loses. And that was taking into account that we're talking about Hooker in Tennessee and how important he is. If Ewers has a good game, if he has the kind of game he's capable of, then I see Texas keeping it close. I mean, I see Texas potentially winning this game. He has struggled on the road some, but I mean, with the young quarterback, I mean, it's so hard, to be so picayune about, a one game on the road where it was bad. But I think, you could argue that Deuce Vaughn in K-State, that one player could also dominate the conversation because they're going to run, how explosive it is. But as Ewers goes, so go the Longhorns in this game and probably in every game down the stretch. So I definitely think K-State is being disrespected here unless they feel that there's something, unless they feel that uncertainty with Martinez not playing and the backup, was it Will Harmon's the backup there?
Will Howard. Yeah, Will Howard.
Will Howard, okay. It sucks being old. I can't remember anything.
No,
but, I mean,
keep messing up names. That's how we get really good views on YouTube when we mess up names. Apparently, people love to comment about us mistaking names. So
thanks for rubbing into salt in the fact that I'm an bitter old man. I really appreciate that, guys. But no, we do love the feedback and the playfulness in it. But how do you sit him based on what he did? That's not a knock on Adrian Martinez.
No, by no means. But I mean, if you look at this team, there's been moments where we have seen, 2-score battles, if you will. Like I think what was it? We saw a couple weeks ago, Kansas State won. What was the score? Let me look at it here. They only beat, what's the game? Iowa State. They only won 24-21 a couple weeks ago. And it was a close match. And then you go to, oh, no, I'm sorry. Iowa State. They won 10-9. I was looking at Texas. They won 10-9. That's the game I was thinking about. against Iowa State, who is right now in the basement of the Big 12. We've already talked about this conversation that the Big 12 can go any which way.
Well, a great defense at Iowa State.
Right. Don't get me wrong there. But Will Howard just did what we thought was the impossible against Gundy and the Pokes, right? We thought that Oklahoma State was going to be a team that was going to be in the running for the Big 12 championship. They still might, who knows? So I think Vegas is playing the game where they think that might be, and I will say, quote unquote, a fluke with Will Howard just coming out of nowhere. Maybe they weren't adjusted or ready for Will Howard. I know there was a quote during the pregame conference with Gundy saying Martinez will play. So maybe they were expecting it. Who knows? Now, what is Texas ready for? Is Texas ready for Will Howard, or are they ready for Adrian Martinez? That is two different defenses you have to play. Martinez is going to be one of those guys that you have to find a way to contain him. Basically takes the defender out of the picture. With Will Howard, if you adjust correctly, you can play some really good defense, disguise some coverages, and really make a quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience out in the field struggle if you can find a way. And I think Texas could do that. We've seen Texas with some pretty spectacular defense this season at points. At points, might I mention. Regardless, who's that quarterback for me at Kansas State? I don't see them losing this football game.
No.
After what we saw last week, the team looked fantastic, and it wasn't just Will Howard. Deuce Vaughn was absolutely incredible, and Texas has allowed over 100 yards per game, 125, might I add. That's a lot of yards in the Big 12 in the running game. And Will Howard or Adrian Martinez, I think, can get the job done against Texas. As much as I think Quinn Ewers is going to be one of the top marquee quarterbacks in college football, I think the mistakes we've seen this year, he's got a learning curve still. I think we got excited about what we saw in that first quarter of Alabama, and I don't blame either of us because I was definitely one of them. I was one that said Quinn Ewers is going to be one of those guys. Who's going to start next year in Texas? It's going to be Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers. I mean, that's going to be a question we're going to talk about all season long, all in the offseason. It's going to be one of those big questions. Maybe one transfers out. Who knows? But Quinn Ewers I think, still has a little bit of work to do. He could shock me again and completely go off the wall in Kansas State. But the fact that after seeing Kansas State completely blow the brakes off the Pokes last week, and now they're a 3-point dog in Manhattan at home, I can't buy it. Kansas State wins this football game. I'm putting them in my parlay as a 3-point favorite, 3-point underdog. Give me 3 points for Kansas State. I'll take it all day.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about this ACC matchup here. And this is an interesting one. It's a weird one in my mind. Wake Forest versus NC State. Did you expect Wake Forest to give 8 turnovers last week against Louisville? Because I didn't. Did you expect NC State to be a team that had a great defense, but Leary, we thought was going to be one of the best quarterbacks, struggle and then be out for the rest of the season? I didn't. I didn't see that happening at all. This is one of those games that we look at. I think it's 21 versus 22 in the rankings. I don't even know which way to turn when I look at this football game. There are struggles at the quarterback position for NC State. They struggled mightily and just got the win last week against Virginia Tech, who is abysmal this year, to say the absolute least. If I had to lean anywhere, I'd lean towards Wake Forest, only because we have seen this team execute brilliantly at times. If they can find a way, and I think they played their absolute best in one of their losses. The loss against Clemson, I think that was when Wake Forest was at their absolute best. Mm-hmm. Sam Hartman threw a college, their program record for touchdowns. I think if they can find a way to get even remotely close to being at that level, they take care of NC State, even with that tough defense, Steve.
I agree. And then let me actually do some Maylocks here. I have a weak spot for Wake Forest. And I think any analyst or any group of people, or like you and I, we all have our personal favorites.
Oh, for sure.
You know, we gush about UTSA, and I'm going to keep gushing about them until I shuffle off this mortal coil. I just love the way that program is. We all have our personal biases. Wake Forest for the ACC, no matter what the sport is, I want to see Wake Forest win. And I have an ACC program less than 3 miles from my house here in Pittsburgh, with Pitt. So you would think that would be the rate I go. No, I mean, there's something about the Wake Forest tradition and the fact that they're always kind of the underdog. I have that soft spot for. Last week, literally, I had chest pains. I mean, and not that I was going to go to the hospital, but I mean, I could feel my heart just breaking and twisting with every turnover that happened. So it would be easy for me to get down on Wake Forest. I think that Hartman was embarrassed. He said all the right things, and he wasn't all whiny about it, but I think he was embarrassed by the performance he turned out. I think he realized that as he goes, so go the Demon Deacons. So by him having a bad game and him not being able to recover, I mean, they did to a certain degree in the second half come back a little bit and kind of right the ship. But I think he realized that all of the highest hopes that Wake Forest fans had and those players had, they're gone now. Now they're just trying to, find the best way they can to get the best bowl invitation that they can. And I think it starts this week.
Yeah.
I mean, NC State's defense, and I love good defense. I love good defenses. When I see scores like 52, 51 or whatever, I mean, it's fun to watch, but then after it's over, I'm like, boy, that just, there's something that's missing in that, but I think Wake Forest comes back and they instill that confidence in themselves. So as they're building toward their bowl game, I think that this team now kind of gets back to where they were probably easily within the top 7 to 10 teams in the country, I think, for a long time. And that Clemson win showed what this team is available. It's what it can do.
Right. I mean, the fact that they just lost to Clemson in 2 overtimes, they were one difficult throw away from Sam Hartman from at least staying in that football game, taking it to 3 overtimes. He looked fantastic. That loss against Louisville obviously makes me concerned for multiple reasons. Because when you look at the rest of their schedule, yes, they got their 6th win, they're bowl eligible, but this was a team that we thought we would be seeing in NY6 bowls. I don't think that's the case anymore.
No.
If they don't win this next football game, which I think the one that they're in right now against NC State may be their easiest one on the schedule because of the injury to Leary, because we don't know we're not really too certain about how the quarterback play has been for NC State since Leary has been out. NC State, like I said, just squeaked by Virginia Tech. This is, I think, their best shot at getting another win, getting to 7. You look at the rest of the schedule, they play North Carolina, Syracuse, and then Duke. We talked about it earlier in the week, I think on Monday. If there is a strong chance that we could have been talking about Wake Forest being a possible ACC contender for the championship to being a 6-6 team when the season's over. And then Louisville could have started the down climb. And if that happened, I mean, we're in some weird territory here. I think they really need to find a way to rebound this week. If they don't, I think they're in big trouble for the rest of the season, regardless who's at quarterback, Sam Hartman, whoever. I think there's some big issues. All right, let's head into the other ACC. This one's ACC versus Independent as we finish off our Saturday 6-pack here, and that's Clemson versus Notre Dame. Another one of those could it happen games in this one. Notre Dame has been on the rise. The preseason polls, I think, were a little too nice to Notre Dame at the beginning of the year. They gave Marcus Freeman a lot of credit to start the season off after being 0-1 in this bowl game, thinking that roster was going to be a lot better than it was. He needed to get that team to get behind him. And I think we're finally starting to see that in the Fighting Irish. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to live up to the expectations that they started the season as. I don't think that is ever going to be the case. But after what we saw them play against Syracuse last week, I would not be shocked if they could do that again against this Clemson team, Steve.
I admit, Dunscap, Arkansas defense, SEC contender. It's on me. I admit, I let my heart lead me with Wake Forest down that path where I thought they would be the ACC champ. That's on me. I am not taking the bait on Notre Dame.
Not yet, at least.
I am not. Have they had some interesting wins, some reasons for hope? Yes. Do they run the football effectively? Most times, yes. They are not even, they shouldn't even be under consideration to be in contention in this game. I think Clemson is going to just pick them apart, and then all of the Fighting Irish fans are going to be licking their wounds again, saying, "Oh, I can't believe it." And they're going to want to call for the firing of the coach because how could you lose to Clemson? How could you be so inconsistent? I don't see it. I don't. I mean, if there's something out there, certainly, if those of you are listening to us now, put the comment up. Educate me. What am I missing here? Or in the comments, on our YouTube channel, tell me. Okay. I mean, I'm a clean slate, right on me. Okay. I don't see it. I don't understand why people are so excited about this game. I really wanted to find another game to get this game off of our six pack. But I mean, you made a good argument. And I understand in Clemson, because they're in the college football playoff discussion, I think we need to talk about them every week. But this is padding the resume. This is like, hey, look, committee, look what we're doing. Look what we're doing. Everybody loves Notre Dame. Look what we're doing. Look what we're doing. This is going to get ugly really fast, and then we're going to have to find another game to turn to in the second half, just out of mercy. It's like you don't want to stop and watch the car wreck as you're driving by it. Out of mercy, we need to just get away and turn to another game and just keep the update on the ticker there.
I don't know if you're right. I don't know if I agree with you, I should say. I mean, you could be right. Any of us could be right or wrong. This is all prediction shows here when we preview these. The fact that I think Notre Dame even has a remote chance is the fact that it's in Notre Dame. It's at home for them. That is the only way I think they have a chance. If this game was in Clemson with their winning streak, no chance in hell. No chance in hell that this game happens. What I saw when Notre Dame against Syracuse last week, and Syracuse put up a pretty good game against Clemson. Okay, we can't forget that. But what I saw with Notre Dame against Syracuse last week, they played some really strong defense. They made Schrader make some mistakes. Now, Clemson did too towards the end of the game. So it might just be a downhill trend for Schrader. But they took care of Syracuse a lot better. They packed up Syracuse, put them in a corner a lot easier than Clemson did. I mean, Clemson had to stop Syracuse on the ending game-winning drive to solidify that win. That was never a doubt. And Notre Dame did it in Syracuse. So, and there are some upward trends, don't get me wrong, for this Notre Dame team. Clemson has a lot to lose in this one, though. Mm-hmm. And we have found in the past that you should never doubt Dabo Swinney, especially when they have their backs up against the wall. And as crazy as it seems, them being an 8-0 team, they're only a 4-point favorite heading into Notre Dame. And you could argue that they have their backs against the wall in this one. This is the first game. They were on a bye week last week, but this is the first game that we are going to see. Is DJ going to play the full game? Because we saw him pulled in the Syracuse game to get them back on the same grind, back on the same pace. We have told DJ is their quarterback. That is a big question mark in my mind. Is his confidence there? Is he going to be able to rebound effectively against this Notre Dame team that is on the rise? I think Clemson gets the job done, Steve. I'm with you. But I don't know if it's a blowout. I don't know if we talk about the licking the wounds part. Now, if Notre Dame goes to 5-4, we're not going to ever hear the stories are never going to stop. That is Marcus Freeman the right guy for Notre Dame? It's his first year. Relax, guys.
Yeah.
But if they find a way to win this football game, which I think there is an opportunity, I don't think it's the prediction that I'm making, but I think the opportunity is there based on what we saw last week in Syracuse. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. This game's on NBC or Peacock at 7:30. this is one of those games where you switch over to see what's going on. If it's close, you keep paying attention to it. I think I'll be leaning towards the Alabama LSU game at that time, though. I'm not going to lie. All right, looks like we are almost done here. We took a little bit for those 6-packs, but that's okay. Real quick, Steve, we got about 5 minutes left before our power hour is over. Let's get into our Misfit games, and we have some fun Misfits in my mind on this one. I took JMU versus Louisville, and the reason I took that one is we just talked about Wake Forest. What Louisville just did to them last week. They're obviously, I think Scott Satterfield is fighting for a job, and I feel like he's finding a way to pad his security blanket, make it a little heavier every week. And I think this game against JMU is pretty important against this one. And I think that Louisville will find a way to win this game. They're a 7-point favorite. I'm going to take Louisville to win this game, get bowl eligible, and I think that helps them win that one. What do you think?
I would love to see James Madison win this game. I don't know that they have enough bullets in the gun to pull it off. Louisville showed me something, and I think everybody knew it was kind of going to be a retooling year, maybe a retooling 2 years or so. They had such a nice run, for a while there. But if Louisville, again, we're building confidence going forward, and that's important with a younger team. You need to show them, hey, there's hope for the future. I think going back to our talk about Texas, I think that's where Sarkisian's done such a great job there at Texas, as he's convinced the fan base and his players, okay, look, we're going to have some struggles here with viewers, but he's our future. Louisville is setting that foundation. This is our future. Look at what, we were able to do. Now, again, there are some juniors and seniors there, so there is a bit of a mix, but I think their recruiting classes continue to be good.
Yeah.
James Madison is just a great story. For them, they beat Louisville, regardless of what stage Louisville might be right now. That's another program builder. So I'm going to go with Louisville in this game. My heart says JMU, but I'm going to go with Louisville in this game.
I thought it's quite interesting for the athletic director of Louisville. Now, we know that right now they're kind of a mess, in all of sports, but the way they figured out their schedule towards the end here, what a weird sandwich. And I'm sure they didn't think it was going to be this tough of a football game, but they play Wake Forest last week, which they took care of, but I'm sure they knew that it was going to be a tough game. Then they played James Madison, probably thinking this was going to be a pillow game. And then next week they got to take on Clemson in Clemson. When you look at the rest of the schedule, I think there is a strong opportunity that if they don't get this win today, they are going to have a really tough time with getting a bowl game. All right, what's your Misfit?
My Misfit game, we're going to focus back again on the Big 12, a conference that you and I believe is the best conference top to bottom in the nation. And we're going to look at Baylor in Oklahoma. Everybody was either outraged or excited when Baylor was sort of disrespected at the beginning of the year. A lot of people felt that even though the successes they had, they thought they were ranked too high. They have 2 conference losses, but really looking at who's left on their schedule, they still have a realistic chance at playing for the Big 12 title. They've got TCU, Kansas State, and Texas left on their schedule. So Baylor's not going away. Baylor has really found a consistency that wasn't there earlier in the year, and they have kept themselves in the conversation, and there is so much talent on that roster to have Baylor still be sniffing around. I think TCU is going to perhaps end that dream, But if they beat TCU, now, the blood's in the water, and it'll be interesting to see the feeding frenzy that happens in the Big 12 after that. And Oklahoma, probably the most disappointing team in the country, like hands down. We knew there would be some adjustments with Venables coming in, and their beloved coach going out to the West Coast. But they also have shown signs of adapting to the system, putting that system into play, utilizing that system to win games and keep them close in games. So both teams have a lot at stake, but in different ways. Oklahoma, okay, maybe they're going to be playing at the, I don't know, the M&M Bowl or what, or whatever, low bowl game could be there. I guess potentially they could do that. But Baylor now suddenly has made this a relevant game. And if they have a good win here and they can pick off two of the three remaining teams on their schedule, then maybe they're playing for the Big 12 title.
Yeah, I want to see how Brent Venables finishes the rest of the season. I want to see if he can find a way to gain some momentum. If he can do that, then I feel like there's a lot more to be hopeful for in the season to come. Obviously, he started off pretty rough. Find a way to get into a decent bowl game. Give yourself some momentum when you hit the recruiting trail and the transfer portal as well, because that is such a big deal as of late, and see what he can do, because I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think that they're going to give up on him. They better not, at least. That would just be, I think, the worst case scenario for finding Oklahoma, get themselves back into where they need to be, especially since they're moving to the SEC soon. They have to have a top-notch team, especially when they hit 2025. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up our show for the Saturday morning special, that nice power hour that we give you. I hope you enjoyed our new time at 10 a.m. We're going to continue to do that here at 10 a.m. Eastern time for the foreseeable future for the rest of the college football season. We're going to give you Saturday content live for the entire year. That basically, it gets us all the way through the end of 2022. That'll be when we give our last Saturday morning special for college football. Hope you enjoyed this one. We'll be back here with more. We'll have our Monday mornings ready for you on the podcast feed and YouTube bright and early Monday morning. Enjoy College Football Saturday. It's going to be a great one. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter at Christian. You can find me at Route Report, and you can find Steve at Feckless Wonder. And of course, you can find us at Slasher Sports as well. If you are interested, please leave us a comment in the YouTube channels, in the show here, or any of our other videos. We have almost 200 videos now at Slasher U. We're bringing you content every single day across the College Sports Network. Thank you so much yet again. We will see you back here next time. Take care.